Hi! If you're an educator, you undoubtedly have heard about curriculum mapping. You might have done some curriculum mapping or heard people talk about curriculum mapping, or maybe curriculum mapping happened before you got to your new position. But we're going to talk a little bit about what curriculum mapping actually is. Very often educators will say, yes, we've done some curriculum mapping, but I'm not sure we've done it right. Or I think that we've done curriculum mapping, but is that really what it is? And so I'm going to talk to you about 5 steps to curriculum mapping. My name is Diane McKinley, and I own Encompassing Education, where we provide high-quality professional development for educators in person and online. And we're going to start by talking about the 5 steps of curriculum mapping now. So the very first step is really to start with your standards. You're going to dig into those standards and really pick them apart and look at them. I often like to say that standards have been written in legalese. So if you're looking at a legal document and it's giving you lots of information and you're trying to get to the bottom of it, and really they could have used much simpler words, sometimes that's how standards feel. And so we really need to dig down into those standards and determine what it is that we need kids to know, understand, and do. And when we look at those standards and we break those down, it's called unpacking or unwrapping the standards. We want to make sure that we are creating an objective and a purpose statement. An objective is in the mind of the teacher. It's for the teacher. You want to think about what you want the students to know, when you want them to know it, and how are you going to know that they know that information. And then a purpose statement is something that you can post in the classroom so that students know their purpose and focus for the entire lesson. It's often called an I can statement, or some people use SWABAT, the student will be able to. Any of those are fine, and you want to make sure they're posted and visible so that students are able to see what their focus is of the day. Once you've gotten in and you've unpacked those standards, you've really dug into them and you know exactly what they are, then you're going to move into step 2. With step 2, you're going to start to group together standards that naturally marry together to help make connections for students. We want to make sure that students are not learning objectives in isolation. They're not a checklist. We want to make sure that they're using those standards, or we're using those standards, so that students are able to make connections between them and they understand how to utilize those in any context, in any situation that they are given. So when you group your standards together, you're going to identify those as units of study. And so you're going to want to name them, and you're also going to determine how long you're going to spend on each unit. Now, typically you want to spend 3 to 6 weeks on a unit, because if you go any more than 6 weeks, research shows us that's too long to go without checking for understanding from our students. And so we want to make sure that at the end of a 3-week or a 6-week period that we have some type of post-assessment there to really drive our instruction and to help us learn what information we can from our students, so that we can also make our interventions happen during that time. And so now that we're moving on to step 3, we have these great units of study. We know that in our units of study what standards are going to be in there and how long we're going to spend. We've even named them. So now in step 3, we're going to lay out our map for the entire school year. So you would want to look at a 10-month map. And in that time, you want to determine exactly the dates that you will be teaching each one of those units. You want to allow some time at the end of a unit so that you can do some intervention pieces there based upon the information that you have from your post-assessment. So once you have all of those units laid out in your 10-month map, that's the end of step 3. When we're moving into step 4, this is a really critical, important piece. Step 4 is when you're going to start to look at how you're going to assess your students. So you're going to create pre-assessments, post-assessments, and checks for understanding. The post-assessment actually comes first. I know it doesn't sound like it should, but we want to use a backward design model. So now we know which standards we're going to be doing during that time. We know what we want them to know. We want to determine how are we going to know they know. So that post-assessment really should be the key driving force. So we know exactly what we're going to assess them on at the end of the unit. That allows us to back up and then be able to teach all of the things that we ultimately want the students to be able to demonstrate their learning of at the end. So that step number 4 is those assessments. You want a post-assessment, a pre-assessment, and checks for understanding along the way. The 5th and final component of your curriculum mapping process is that you are going to work on all of the nuts and bolts that go into those units of study. Now that you know what you ultimately want them to know at the very end of the unit, now you're going to go through and say, here are the things that I'm specifically going to teach, and here are the ways I'm going to teach them. So you want to make sure that you have individual lessons kind of laid out and planned out there. It doesn't have to be as detailed as a lesson plan, but it needs to be a great framework. You also want to think about how you're going to have students utilize that learning in some real world context projects or processes or situations, so that they're able to make sure that they're able to utilize those skills in any context given. And then you also want to make sure you have things in there like your differentiation and your accommodations for all of your students, as well as any vocabulary that you're going to be going over. Now, this is obviously just a quick run through and a framework of what it looks like to do a full process of curriculum mapping. It is what's ultimately going to give you amazing instruction in your classroom and amazing results from your students. If you want a deeper dive, please feel free to message me, and I would welcome any comments or questions that you have. You can always follow us on our Facebook page. You can always join us at www.encompassinged.com. That's encompassinged.com. We also have a series of online professional development called Lounge and Learn, where you can learn from the comfort of your own home, and you can earn professional growth points while doing that. You can visit our website and click Lounge and Learn on the very top tab. I hope you have a wonderful day.